all. Let's cross over now to take the story of retailers further, as we've just been talking about entering new markets for South Africa's big retailers. Now, Kenya is a big country with a big middle class, but if you're a retailer heading into this market, you've got to face up to a few problems. Inflation, for instance, has hit 28% in September. Wages have fallen way behind inflation. Economists are now warning that employers will have to hike wages by 30% in the next year just to let people get by and give workers buying power that they had as recently as 2005. We've been saying that the devil is in the retail in Africa, and it seems that's definitely the case in Kenya and East Africa broadly. Jane Delaurie is an analyst tracking retailers. For us, she joins us now from Nairobi, Kenya. Jane Delaurie, the warmest welcome. We're seeing ShopRite coming into that market. We're seeing Pick n Pay trying to catch up. We're seeing retailers from Europe also trying to penetrate that space. In the meantime, you've got your own like Nakamut and Uchumi also trying to gain their market share. How viable is it for retailers to start expanding into Kenya and East Africa? And are they going to get the profits they're hoping for?
Good morning. I think there are definitely opportunities for retailers in this part of the world, in East Africa. There is competition. The local chains are very strong, but there are very definitely opportunities simply because consumerism is growing. We have an increasing urban population in Kenya and in the whole of East Africa. So there is more opportunity, there are more consumers, and there are more people shopping in supermarkets. Previously, and still in much of the country, most of the retail buying was done through kiosks and very small stores. But there is a move towards supermarkets and towards larger retailers, and therefore that provides an opportunity.
Okay, you talk about opportunities, but what about the flip side? Inflation at over 25%. It definitely must be putting pressure on consumers' purchasing power, but also on the cost of doing business.
I think definitely on the cost of doing business. Consumers, I don't know, I don't have any figures yet on how it's impacting the bottom line for the retailers. But when I go to the supermarket, the queues are just as long as ever. People are still shopping. And I think that much of the supermarket shopping is still FMCG, consumer goods. People still need to eat. They still need detergents. They still need personal care products. So we haven't seen the impact in the consumer market yet of the inflation. But I do think that it will have an impact on the cost of doing business, and that's something that we'll need to look at and track.
Let's talk about the cost of doing business. Inflation means that food imports are definitely becoming more expensive for the retailer. Electricity hikes we've been talking about in Kenya in recent months, adding to inflationary pressures, and of course poor wages. So if a retailer has to come in, they have to think of paying their people above inflationary wages, and then add to that the broader operational costs. So really, how lucrative a time is this?
I think that retailers have had quite large margins in the past, so it's going to eat into those margins, definitely. But as I said, the consumers still have to buy their personal products, their foodstuffs, etc. And the supermarkets are able to offer price advantages that the small kiosk, the small retailer is not able to provide. So the opportunity is for the supermarket to take advantage of its better purchasing power and offer prices better than the traditional outlets like the kiosk and the small trader.
Okay, you keep on emphasizing the important role of the small trader and the balancing act between the big mega store. The Kenyan government's raised a few concerns about that. I mean, you've got your own in-house internal brand by way of Nakumatt. Uchumi, which had had some liquidity problems, has now come back to the fore, and there is a sense that the government in the area wants to protect these local retailers and also the small kiosk and corner store before allowing this invasion from the ShopRites, the Pick n Pays and the like.
I think overall the Kenyan government is very protective of local industry, and yes, that is the situation. In particular, Uchumi, which was a government parastatal, it is partially government owned. They're very protective of that, and yes, it means that any international or outside retailer coming into the market is going to struggle. It's not a market like Ghana or like many of the other African countries where there is no competition. It is a market where there is a vibrant competitive situation. You do have a number of supermarket chains, but those supermarket chains at the moment are growing. And they are building a network outside, particularly Nakumatt is building a network outside the country and outside the traditional retail markets of Nairobi and Mombasa. So they're not only going out into Rwanda, Tanzania, etc., but they're also looking at other markets in Kenya, smaller towns, and there's definite growth. But I agree, the government is very protective, and it does not offer the incentives that many African and many East African governments would offer someone coming into the marketplace.
All right, Jane Delaurie, thank you very much for your time. Jane Delaurie is the MD at Research Solutions. It's time for us to